Have you ever found practice to be kind of frustrating, or maybe you have a bit of a no pain, no gain kind of attitude when it comes to practice? Well, we're going to talk about whether or not that's a good idea, why it happens, and what you should do about it. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at QuickStartClarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. It's true that it is somewhat normal for practice to be frustrating at times, but let's actually unpack that frustration a little bit and figure out what is making practice frustrating so then we can see if that's valuable for us or not. So what I find to be frustrating and what I think frustration is in practice, and actually honestly probably this is the source of frustration in all of life, is when our expectations are different from the outcome. So you can think about this in any example in your daily life. If you think that you're gonna get dessert when you go out to eat and then you end up not getting dessert, that's disappointing, that can be frustrating. Applying it to practice, if you're expecting to sound great and be able to nail the notes and rhythms at tempo, but you're not able to, then that can be frustrating. And I think that honestly is the source of all frustration. And maybe it starts as just a little disappointment or like, oh, bummer, it didn't go well on the first try. I wasn't able to sight read it perfectly. And then you break down a little chunk and start isolating the hard stuff and start doing repetitions on it, and you do it again. And it's like, still frustrating, or still not quite right. You do it again, still not quite right. Do it again, still not quite right. And after doing that several times, whether it's the same mistake that keeps coming up or a new mistake every single time, then the frustration starts to build and you start to think, what's wrong with me? Why am I not able to get this? I was expecting to be able to get this and it's not happening. Then frustration is the natural outcome of that. Now, this could be beneficial in our playing because we do need to have high expectations and have a clear image of how we want the music to go, or we'll never get there. You can never be frustrated in your practice, but always sound bad, and you'll never run into frustration unless you have expectations of wanting to sound better or have an understanding and a clear idea of what it could sound like if you were able to do it better. So I think that really proves the idea that frustration comes from the gap between expectation and current playing output, because whether we close the gap this way or close the gap this way, the frustration goes away. And I think most of us want to close the gap this way where our abilities come up to our expectation rather than the other way, because then we'll just be really satisfied being very mediocre at our playing. Now this begs the question, if we want to close that gap and if having that gap being there is good, then is it actually beneficial and productive for us to be frustrated in our practice? Is it that kind of no pain, no gain idea? I think this especially is relevant to speed, where we kind of think, I have to play 16th notes at 120, so I'm going to set my metronome to 120 and I'm going to play my 16th notes, and eventually through enough repetitions I'll power through it and eventually be able to play it. And hopefully that happens by the performance, that you're able to pound in enough repetitions and sort of lift those weights, feel the pain, and get the gain and the payoff by the performance. However, if you're familiar with me and my teaching philosophy, that's not really what I think. The no pain, no gain kind of mentality when it comes to really practicing anything, I don't think is beneficial, especially if it's on the physical pain side, which is a little bit of another tangent, but it's important to have a discussion about here really briefly. If you're having a lot of physical mouth pain, physical hand pain, any kind of physical pain when playing really any instrument, then no pain, no gain is not the way to go. You need to find ways to move more efficiently, move more ergonomically. Maybe if you're a string player, like build up a little bit of calluses, but that's like the tiniest bit of exception to this idea. If you're experiencing physical pain, you need to figure out something different so that that doesn't continue and grow. But when it comes to actually closing the gap this way, I think the thing that we need to do is actually start by closing the gap this way. It's kind of a temporary lowering of our expectations. So on the first day, don't expect that you're going to be able to sight read through the entire piece at tempo perfectly. Instead, take a small section, take down the tempo quite a bit, and play it in a way that's comfortable, confident, consistent, and of course, correct is also very important. So that's going to be the way that we avoid frustration in our practice, but still grow over time, is we temporarily take those expectations down and accept that we're only going to be able to play it maybe at half tempo right now, maybe at a third of tempo for right now. But the cool thing that happens is as we sort of lower the tempo expectations, we can raise other expectations and actually be able to meet them. One really obvious one is being able to actually play the right notes. So if you're trying to go full tempo and meet this expectation, you're gonna have to lower your expectation for getting the right notes because it's just not possible for you to sight read the right notes at that tempo, depending on whatever piece you're working on, of course. But by lowering the tempo and raising the expectations for other things, it allows us to keep our brain engaged so that we're really thinking about what the notes actually are. If you're going slow enough, you might be able to notice some sort of harmonic patterns, some note grouping patterns. Is this a scale? Is this an arpeggio? Maybe it's a scale in thirds. You can start to recognize some of those things, maybe see what key you're in and see where the leading tones are, and hopefully they're resolving and all of that stuff is making sense and you're starting to get a more complete picture of the pattern of the notes. And that's just talking about notes, not to mention you can do better dynamics, you can do better articulations, because you've relaxed the expectation of speed enough that you're able to actually think about and get all of those other things going really well. And the biggest benefit, the topic of this video, is that you're not going to feel frustrated as you're practicing because you're going to be actually getting the notes, actually getting the rhythm even, doing the dynamics, doing the articulations, and making music. Sure, it's not at full tempo, but if we lower that tempo expectation, it allows us to meet the other expectations and have much, much more satisfying experiences of practice. And if we do raise those other expectations and really go to meet them and keep our brain engaged, our brain is going to understand that this is important information. This needs to actually sink in and get it learned in. Our brain will automatically myelinate those processes. If you want to learn more about that, check out this video on specifically playing faster. But as you myelinate those things, they'll sink in. So I don't believe in no pain, no gain. I don't think that's the best way to practice. Every now and then, maybe 2% of the time, you can push the extremes and just see where you're at and see what you're capable of and keep an idea of what that final expectation is in mind. But most of the time, the majority of the time, we should be lowering especially our speed expectation and the size of chunk expectation, so doing smaller chunks, so that we can meet those other expectations and have satisfying practice. So I hope that this idea is helpful for you. I'm excited to hear how it goes when you apply it in your practice. Thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you in another video. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the QuickStart Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.